myautismresources.com. Brought to you by AORP Learning. Hello and welcome. Okay, what I'm going to talk about in this video is the importance of teaching subject and topic information to children with autism, particularly at the level of autistic, non-verbal and autistic. Okay, so one of the questions you might ask is, why teach them this information? Why bother? Will it be relevant to them? Will it actually help them? The answer is yes, definitely. If you don't teach this information to them, then what you have to consider is that every lesson that they do may as well just be one lesson. So they start the day, and as they finish one lesson, they start the next. It's like one giant lesson from the start of the day to the end of the day. Now, if you're giving them that subject and topic information, then you're breaking that information down into digestible amounts. So they know what they're learning is relative to this information that you're giving them, and it helps them to get a much larger understanding of the information that they're learning. It also helps them to realize what information is relevant to other information, which, if you don't have this subject and topic information, they just cannot make those connections. They can't bridge those gaps. So, okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through some basics. To a lot of people, this may seem like stuff you very much already know, but there's a reason why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, and there's a reason why I'm explaining it the way I'm explaining it. And that is because if we don't take these extra steps to break this information down and simplify it, what then happens is when you give this information to them, or if you don't give this information to them, there's a world of understanding they're just not getting. So the first thing you would want to do is present the subject. And I'm going to grab our subject here. We have maths. So how would you present this information to them? Well, before we get into that, let's just have a look at this. You can see that the writing is quite large, it's really clear, it's a good clear font. So this is really important. It's no good giving them a little tiny card with the word maths on it, or a font that's joined or unclear. You don't necessarily have to print this out, you can write it by hand, but the information needs to be really clear. And again, really large, it's got to stand out. So you also need a display area, somewhere where you can put this information. Now what I've done here, I've got a Velcro on the back, I've got a Velcro on the board. So I can just stick this information here like that. And there you are, it stands out really clear, a white background, black writing. You may ask, why not just write this information on the board? Well, there is some information on the board here. You can just about see it, but it's not particularly clear. The chalk doesn't really stand out, it kind of blends in. So it's really important that this information is presented really clearly. So another important thing to remember is make sure the area where you put this display information is a clear area. Don't put this on a wall somewhere or a board where there's tons of writing or pictures. Just keep this information really isolated, really clear, so that when you're explaining this information and you're giving this information to the student or students, they can see it really clearly throughout the entire lesson. So that is really important. So the question is, how would you present this information to them, and when would you present this information to them? So you would present this information to them at the very start of every lesson. So if they're just starting maths, you want to present to them maths. If they're doing English, you'd present English, and so on with all your subjects. But it is really crucial that this is done at the start of every lesson. You may ask, why present this information if they're at a much lower developmental level? They might not understand this information. Why bother? The point is, if you present this information in every lesson, at the start of every lesson, you are role modelling. And for people or children who are at the level of non-verbal and autistic, role modelling is probably one of the biggest ways they will learn information. And we're talking role modelling over a period of time. So they may not understand this information, but if this information is there at the start of every lesson, every day, and this goes on, the lessons loop back round, they will eventually start to make those connections that the work they're doing is relative to this information that they're seeing. So it's forming that mental bridge, that connection between the work they're doing and the information you're giving them. It allows them to categorize this information. So that's really useful to them, because if you imagine you're teaching various topics in different subjects, but they don't know that the subjects are changing, and particularly when the topics come back round for the same subject, they don't know they're back on the same subject. Having this information bridges that gap. It gives meaning to the information that they're learning. So that's why it is so crucial to give them this information. So if we were going to present this information, the best way to start would be when they're settled in the class, you need to get their visual attention and their auditory attention. So, you can use cues like look, listen. And this will help a lot. This will really help a lot. So get their visual and their auditory attention and then present this information. So an example of how I would do this, the students in front of me, I've got their visual and auditory attention, and you just simply go for it. Maths. So one word, which is the word on here, showing them this, pointing to this. This is how you present this information. That's very tempting when you present this information to say something like, well, the subject today is maths. Too much information, way too much information. You have to really single this information down to just the word that you're seeing, so that they can hear just that word. They only need the important information, not all the padding about the information. I know this feels good to us, it makes us feel more sociable and friendly and all the rest, but until they reach that level, all they need is just that information that they're seeing in front of them. And it's really important that it's done this way and not gone into all that extra detail, because they won't get it, they just won't make those connections. So, first thing is we show them this, we say its name, maths. Now, what do you do if they're not looking at this information or listening? I mean, we've said we can use visual cues, visual and auditory cues like look, listen. Now, they still may not look, they still may not listen. So, it may be important then to engage with them, take this information to them, put it on a table or something, somewhere where they can see it in front of them. Again, get them to look at this. But if they're not looking or listening, take their index finger and do hand over hand. Touch the name and say Maths, using their finger. So that's one way to engage them. If they are still not paying attention, then tap their finger and keep tapping until their eyes are engaged looking at this information, and then say its name. Maths. They will draw their attention to it, they will focus on this information, and they will hear the words coming out of your mouth, so they will engage in the understanding of this information. Even if they don't understand it, they will know that they're looking at it, they will hear what you're saying, and over a period of time, the long-term learning, this role modelling will teach them this information. Whether they understand it or not, they will start to bridge that gap and draw the relationship between the work they're doing and the information they're seeing. So really important, really useful to do that with them. Obviously, people are at all different levels. If they're upset or they're not in the right frame of mind, you can't force them to look at this information. So the idea is, obviously you want to get them calm first, nice and calm and relaxed, then present this information to them. So we present this information to them, and once we've presented it, we then put it on our display area. So this is now on our display area, somewhere where they can see it. Again, big clear writing. This should stand out from wherever they are in the room, and hopefully they will see this throughout the entire lesson. So it's important that they can see this throughout the entire lesson. So by doing this, they're going to learn this information. And of course, once they're at the level of learning this information, or if they're already at this level, we can then move on to the next part, which is presenting the topic. So again, exactly the same. You're getting their visual and their auditory attention, and we're then presenting the information. Shapes. Just again, the single word. Do not explain that the topic is shapes or go the extra way. Keep it simple. So again, you've shown them that information. If they're not looking, again, make it personal, take it to them. Again, hand over hand, touching, tapping, whatever it takes to get their attention on this information. And then when they've seen this information, attach it to the display under the subject, so they can then see this information throughout the lesson. It's really important in the fullness of time that you have both the subject and the topic, because the subjects are going to be reoccurring very regularly, but the topics are going to be quite a high turnover. They're going to change. They're going to be the same for a period of time, but then they're going to change. But it's really important they build this relationship up of understanding that the work they're doing relates to the topics, and that the topics relate to the subjects. So even when the subject changes, they're still seeing this. Even when the topic changes, they're still seeing the subject. So they know that this is always a part of that. So it's really important that they understand that information. So very useful. So that's how we would start doing this initially. It's really important we do this. We build this information for them, this role modelling procedure. It's good to give them extra responsibility with this. So if you really want to develop this and really improve their understanding, then one of the things to do is make them responsible for this information. So at the start of every lesson, particularly if you're just starting out, or even if you're not, keep this information somewhere where they will see and find this information, for example on their desk, and then show them this information as we've just done, but get them to pick this information up, get them to attach this information to the display. Now if they're not at that level, obviously you can help them with this. You can help them to carry this information, help them to take it to the board or display area, and help them to attach it to the display area. So you can do that, but as they progress, they will be able to do this for themselves, maybe initially with just verbal prompting. So in the case of my daughter, she's at the level where I could tell her, I could say, maths. In fact, I would show it her first. This is how I would do it if I was in the class. I would first get her attention, I'd show her the information, maths. I'd then put it somewhere where she can see it in front of her, and I would say, pick it up. She would then pick it up. I'd then say, put it here, and she would put it here. Now, she may find it a little bit difficult initially to attach it on here, or she may not be interested, so she might drop it on the floor. If this happens with the student, then just get them to pick it up, or pick it up for them, give it to them as much as they will tolerate, get them to hold it as much as they will tolerate. In my daughter's case, she would hold this, she would carry it to where it needs to be, and she would put it on the display area. Even if she needed some help, you could do this, but over a period of time, she would do this for herself. That's pretty much a given. She could do this for herself now. There was a time where she couldn't, so again, these things develop over time. So again, do the same with the subject. Speak it to them. Shapes. Get them to pick it up. Pick it up. Get them to attach it to the display. So put it here. And that will be how we would go about giving them this responsibility. This is something you can develop on, because over a period of time, initially you would just give them only the subject that they're studying. You give them only the topic that they're studying when they're ready for that information. But over a period of time, you'll give them both the subject and the topic information for all subjects, and they would have to find the correct subject and topic and then attach that information. So really useful to do it this way. Additionally, you'll notice I have no symbols. It's really important to develop their understanding of words. Once you go putting symbols around, you then get them looking at pictures. You then have the additional information of colours. They will focus on the images and the colours more than they will on the words. So if you want them to be learning words, you really need to stick to the word information. Don't be frightened of this. A lot of people feel that if people are autistic, they have to have symbols. This is definitely not the case. You know, they don't have to have symbols. And don't be fooled when people tell you that if you give them symbols with words, they will learn the words. That's not necessarily true. Very often, they won't even look at the words until you remove those images, those colours, you know, declutter. You don't want to visually overload them, and it's very easy to do that. So we want to keep this information minimalist. So just these basic words, just saying this basic information. If you can do this, you will massively improve the way they learn, because as they see this information throughout every lesson and they do their studies, they will start to build the relationship, as I mentioned, with the work and the information we've presented, and that categoric information will enhance their understanding to such a level that they will be able to grasp new concepts, they will be able to digest information better. I mean, you have to realise that if you're giving them their lessons throughout the entire day with none of this information, it is one mass of information, one mighty mass. And it's overload, so we don't want to overload them. And when information is relevant to other information, they will grasp this concept if you're doing this over a period of time. So there's so much extra learning from presenting this information and the information they're learning within their studies. Thank you very much for watching.
For more information on this tutorial and others, visit myautismresources.com.